Have you ever told yourself that if you could just plan everything perfectly, then you could finally relax? That if you could build the perfect 5-year plan, you could shield yourself from the harsh winds of life? For the better part of a decade, that's exactly how I lived. My life was a fortress, built with schedules, contingency plans, and a relentless drive for control. I was driven by a deep-seated fear of the unknown, a desperate need to believe that I was the one drawing the blueprints of my destiny. But what happens when the ground beneath that fortress begins to shake? What happens when the walls you've so carefully built come crashing down? This is the story of how losing control, of surrendering to the chaotic dance of life, ultimately saved me. This is how embracing the simple, profound truth of impermanence didn't just change my life, it gave me a life I never knew was possible. To understand where I am now, you have to understand the guy I used to be. On the outside, I seemed to have it all figured out. My career was climbing, my finances were tracked in meticulous spreadsheets, and my days were planned in 15-minute blocks. I genuinely believed that chaos was a personal failing. But this wasn't just about being organized. It was a survival mechanism born from anxiety. I feared failure, judgment, and most of all, the vast unknown. The thought that something could happen outside my plans was existentially terrifying. Control was my drug of choice, the illusion that I could outsmart fate itself. I remember planning a 2-week vacation, my first real break in years. Instead of excitement, I felt panic. I spent a month creating a 30-page document with backup itineraries for bad weather, a list of the highest-rated hospitals near every location, and photocopies of our passports in 3 separate places. My partner at the time said, "It's a vacation, not a military operation." To me, they felt the same. The irony is that my quest for a stress-free vacation was causing an incredible amount of stress. This obsession bled into every corner of my life. In my relationships, I tried to manage emotions and predict outcomes, rehearsing conversations to steer them toward my desired ending. I wasn't connecting with people. I was trying to cast them in a play I had already written. At work, this meticulous nature was rewarded with promotions, which only reinforced my belief. Control works, but it came at a cost. I was creatively suffocated, avoiding risky, innovative projects because the outcomes were too uncertain. My world was getting smaller and safer, but profoundly less inspiring. My entire life was built on a lie, the belief in permanence. I acted as if my job, health, and relationships were fixed things that, with enough maintenance, would last forever. I was living in defiance of a fundamental truth of existence. The ancient Buddhists call this truth Anicca. It means impermanence, the doctrine that all of existence is in a constant state of flux. I was trying to build a dam in the middle of a river, completely convinced I could stop the current. The pressure was building, and the cracks were already forming. Life, as it usually does, didn't care about my plans. The first tremor was my job. The company I'd given a decade to went through a sudden restructuring. My position was eliminated, gone. Losing my job felt like losing a piece of my identity. That 5-year plan on my laptop was now pure fiction. Panic set in. My fortress had been breached. For weeks, I was in a freefall as my routines dissolved into aimless, anxious days. Then, the second tremor hit, a health scare. A routine checkup found an anomaly that needed more tests. Suddenly, I was face to face with the fragility of my own body. Those weeks of waiting were hell for a mind like mine. There was nothing to plan, nothing to control. I couldn't make a spreadsheet that would guarantee a good outcome. I was powerless, and the fear became a deafening roar. During this storm, my relationship finally broke. My partner, exhausted, told me she couldn't do it anymore. "I need to be with someone who is in their life," she said, not just trying to manage it. Her words were true. In my quest to control everything, I had forgotten to simply participate. In a few short months, the 3 pillars of my life career, health, love, had crumbled. I was left standing in the rubble of my fortress. There were no more walls, no more plans, no more illusions. I had hit rock bottom. That's where the real journey began. Stripped of everything, I was forced to face the man in the rubble. He was terrified, lost, and so tired of fighting a war against reality. The turning point wasn't a dramatic epiphany. It was quiet. I was sitting in a park, watching leaves fall, and a thought floated into my mind. This too shall pass. It's a cliche, but in that moment, it was a revelation. My suffering wasn't caused by the changes themselves, but by my desperate clinging to the idea that things shouldn't change. That thought was the first seed of a new life. I started reading for wisdom, not productivity. I found the Stoics Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. Their core idea, the dichotomy of control, resonated deeply. Focus only on what's in your power, your response, and accept the rest. I also started practicing mindfulness meditation. Slowly, I learned to see my anxious thoughts not as commands, but as clouds passing in the sky of my awareness. They arise and they cease. Anicca. This practice created a small pocket of peace between an event and my reaction to it. This journey was intensely personal, but I know the desire for control is universal. So I'm curious, what's your relationship with control? Have you ever had a moment where life just forced you to let go? Share your story in the comments. Reading about what others have been through is a powerful reminder that we're never alone in these struggles. Rebuilding was slow, and this time, it wasn't about putting up walls. It was about learning to live without them, learning to swim in the river of life instead of trying to dam it. My approach to work changed completely. I stopped looking for secure jobs and instead asked, what am I genuinely curious about? This led me to freelance work in a field I never would have considered. It was less stable, but for the first time, I felt alive in my work. I realized the security I'd been chasing was a cage. Real security wasn't a job title. It was my ability to adapt. My health scare resolved, thankfully, but it left its mark. I no longer take my body for granted. I take care of myself now, not to hit a metric on a spreadsheet, but out of genuine appreciation for the temporary gift of being alive. The biggest change was in my relationships. By letting go of the need to control outcomes, I finally learned how to truly connect. I started actually listening instead of just planning my response. I learned to love people for who they are and to be vulnerable. My connections are now deeper and more real than ever before. Life is no longer a problem to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived. I still have goals, but I hold them lightly. They're like a rudder on a sailboat, not a train schedule. I can steer, but I have to work with the wind and the current. I can't control the weather, but I can adjust my sails. Embracing impermanence has brought me a peace I never thought possible. When you truly accept that everything changes, you stop fighting reality. You still feel pain, but you don't add the second layer of suffering, the suffering of wishing things were different. This journey taught me a few things I try to live by every day. First, know what you can and cannot control. My attitude and effort are in my control. Traffic and how someone else reacts are not. This frees up so much energy. Second, practice being present. Grounding yourself in the now is the ultimate antidote to anxiety about the future. Third, practice gratitude. Knowing nothing lasts forever makes you appreciate what you have right now. And finally, build your resilience. Resilience is a skill, not a trait. You build it by facing challenges, learning from them, and nurturing your connections. The life I have today is so much richer than the one I had so carefully planned. By losing control, I found a deeper kind of freedom. By surrendering to the flow of life, I found a strength I never knew I had. The fortress I built to keep out the unknown was also a prison keeping me from actually living. Tearing it down was terrifying, but it was the beginning of my real life. Embracing impermanence isn't a one-time fix. It's a daily practice of meeting life as it is, not as you demand it to be. It's the courageous act of stepping into the unknown, trusting that you can navigate whatever comes your way. It's about finding peace, not in the absence of chaos, but right in the middle of it. The river of life will always flow. The secret is to stop fighting the current, let go of the shore, and learn how to swim.